what we're going to talk about here is really the role of social media and how it is disrupting what we do as financial marketers. And we thoughtfully put this panel together to try to represent some different perspectives and to give you some very, very specific viewpoints into, what is it like to manage credit card acquisition? What is it like when you are in the technology hub of a major financial institution, when you're managing retirement, when you're running a technology company, et cetera. And so we hope that these different viewpoints are going to help bring this to life. And so what we're going to do, and Claire, we can start down with you with Hearsay Social, and we'll allow you each to introduce yourselves coming on up, and then we'll start this way with questions heading back down.
Thank you. I'm Claire Shai. I'm the CEO and founder of Hearsay Social. We're a social media compliance and marketing software company based in Silicon Valley with recently opened offices here in New York. And I'm also on the board of Starbucks.
Hi everyone, I'm Cara Segreto. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer of the Retirement Division of Prudential. And our business takes a two-part approach. First half of the business is 401k, 403b, 457, defined benefit and non-qual servicing and administration. And the other half of the business is institutional investment product manufacturing.
Hi, I'm Sean Belka. I'm the head of the Fidelity Center for Applied Technology. Fidelity Investments is a large financial services company and mutual fund brokerage.
Hi, my name is Frank Eliason. I'm Senior Vice President of Social Media for Citibank. Also, I guess, author of At Your Service. Many knew my work while I was with Comcast.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Audrey Hendley, and I'm the Senior Vice President and General Manager of New Member Acquisition for Open at American Express.
Fantastic. What I'd like to do is maybe just start with a general question around how has social media changed what each of you do, and then from there we'll drill in. And then also we're going to leave a few minutes at the end for questions from the crowd. So we'll spend half hour or so like this, and then we'd love to engage you folks. Audrey.
So how has social media changed?
Yeah, how has it changed what you do?
Well, American Express is a member-generated company. We transact and talk to our customers every day, not just because you take your card out, but because you also call us every day. Social media has provided us with an even greater way to talk to our customers and to our prospects in a way that's one-to-one, the way other media can't always do. So it's provided us with a tremendous amount of opportunity to just deepen our engagement with our customers and create a more personal connection with them.
And can you give the audience a little bit of understanding of how does your business work? What are the core things that you look at, and how do you measure your success?
Across American Express?
In
what I do? Or?
Yeah, why don't you couch it across American Express and then in what you do specifically?
Well, at the core of what we do at American Express is obviously we have a huge credit card and charge card business, but we also have a lot of ancillary businesses that come to the core. So we obviously generate a lot of customers who spend a lot, who get more customers, which then creates a merchant business that accept and issue cards. Also, that creates a travel business and many other related businesses that emulate from our card products. How we use social is to really amplify our brand messages. We obviously, as you can imagine, have a tremendous amount of brand messaging in the marketplace, above the line, direct response, and then we use social to really amplify those messages and help to bring our messages across the different communication strategies as well as the communication day-to-day activities that happen, everything from customer service right through to acquiring customers and retention and engagement of customers.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
To me, it's changed my career dramatically. I see myself as a simple customer service guy. But what I really see with social media is it's shifting the funnel, it's shifting the control. Control is now more in the hands of your customer. I'll take it a step further though. It's in control for the hands of your employee. And this shift is not only it's already changing the culture at our companies, at all companies. Doesn't matter how it is. Companies are forced to be more open now than they were before. They have to engage in different ways. And to even be a part of that message, they have to also build that trust. And I think trust is a huge piece that companies may not have had for a long time, so it's earning that as well.
Appreciate it. John?
Yeah, for us, it's really clear. Our goal is really to create a great experience for our customers and to help them with their big goals. Big goals like educating their children and their retirement. And so it's been kind of evolutionary to your talk, Mike, in terms of, 20 years ago that meant having 7x24 phone service. then it meant online, then it meant having mobile, then it meant kind of having web, et cetera. And so we look at social as an evolution of how we interact with customers, how we inform them, how we educate them, how we serve them. And it's part of a long evolution of meeting the customer where they are in the manner that they want to be met to help them to achieve their goals.
And Sean, can you give us some understanding of how your group works with Infidelity and what you actually do to bring technology to the organization?
Sure. Our group tries to look at emerging technology and then really say, well, how will this help us to better serve customers? So, a few years ago, that would have been mobile, and social. And so how do we then go out and say, here's something that's new in the environment. Is there a customer benefit here? Is this going to help them retire with peace of mind and dignity? Is this going to help them educate their children? Is it going to help them engage in their financial lives in a way that's productive? And so what we typically do is do the research, do some pilots, and then transition it to our businesses.
Great, thanks. Kara?
Well, of course, it would be remiss going fourth in the row. Everything they said, but on a much more practical level as a marketer, you've always spent a majority of your career with sales and product. What social has really done is shifted where you're spending an equal, if not more, of your time with technology and compliance and technology law. And for us, it's again, all those engagements. We have the individual engagements with our ultimate consumers for most of our businesses, which are in-plan participants in 401k plans, but we also have engagement with institutions, the institutional buyer and decisions makers, as well as intermediaries and influencers. So it's really shaped how we've changed our marketing strategies, the shift you've seen in your media mix and in your spends, and it forces you to take a much more integrated approach to the marketplace and your customers. So it's been, I think it's been a significant change in a marketer's role definitely in the last 2 years.
Thanks. And Claire, you must have an interesting perspective on this. Maybe you can introduce your business a little bit and then frame how social media apparently has created an opportunity to do what you do.
Sure. So Hearsay Social is an enterprise social media marketing and compliance platform. And today we support tens of thousands of advisors, registered reps, and other bank and firm employees at firms like Goldman Sachs, Northwestern Mutual, Thrivent Financial, and a host of others. And we really noticed two things at Hearsay Social that was transformative about social media. The first is the proliferation of online identity through profiles. The fact that we live in a very different world today where people are freely sharing information about themselves, where they work, their role, their title, their job history, perhaps their favorite books and movies, their hobbies, who their friends are. And it turns out a lot of this information is very valuable for the financial world. And in particular, when you have money in motion events like a career change or getting married or having a child, those typically are great triggers for financial services discussions. So that was the first insight. And at Hearsay, we realized that there was a lot of opportunity in helping to algorithmically bubble up when an important event was taking place versus the noise, and making that, helping surface that for a financial advisor or asset manager. That was insight number one. The other one that I'll talk about is the social graph, and really how an online social graph has fundamentally changed the way that consumers, clients, prospects discover content, products, and services. So we've shifted from a world that was largely search-based. When I was at Google, everybody searched to find their product or service or their financial advisor. Today, it's a different world. Today, it's discovery-based. And increasingly, people are finding news, financial advisors, banks through their newsfeed, through what their friends and colleagues and trusted people on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook are posting. And so that shift, both in time on site, on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, versus Google, as well as the amount of referring traffic on social networking sites surpassing that of Google search that happened about a year ago, that's been transformative for marketers across every industry.
Appreciate it. So I'm going to ask a question then, Kara, I'm going to give you the opportunity to speak first. We're going to head this way. So we just heard from Meredith a number of really interesting large macro trends, and a lot of them were about consumer behavior. I'd love to hear from each of you about a consumer trend that you've been focused on, either that's important to your firm or in your specific business, and then how you are reacting to that trend.
Yeah, I'm going to probably speak in a real niche for us, a consumer trend for us, and I'm going to think broad consumer here. First, those decision makers, whether they be that category of intermediaries or influencers or the institutions that we service. We've seen a real trend toward a desire to acquire and engage in discussions about thought leadership, changes in how we're going to market and the products that we're creating to meet needs. Specifically for us right now, there has been a big shift in income products in our space, income products within retirement plans. And we have many dealings in Washington, and many of our product leaders are out there talking about this. We have research and white papers around this, and we're seeing a desire to not only acquire that, but also engage in discussions about that. And we found social media, and specifically for us, LinkedIn, because of the professional network, to be a great tool for that. By way of example, head of our institutional business is, obviously under the guise of FINRA and has to follow all the guidelines and the like, but has really been able to use LinkedIn to engage with the folks that he talks to in Washington, influencers, his colleagues at other firms, in dialogues about what we're thinking, what they're thinking. It's been a tremendous success. We're seeing much more in our business about those types of engagements around knowledge sharing and knowledge transfer, and we're actually now at a point where we're looking to how do we help get in front of that so we can engage people as we're developing the papers and as we're developing the thoughts, so we're getting that mind share at the beginning.
Thanks. Sean?
Oh, yep. So Claire talked about the social graph, and I think a trend we see is something analogous, which is really around a decision graph. So if you look at financial services, particularly the categories that we serve, people have to make big decisions, and historically they might have had a single source for that, and now they want to aggregate. So they want to say, when I make a decision, I may want to bring in this video and this content. I might want to bring in an advisor, but I also might want to bring in my brother-in-law. And so the question is, how can we help them to get the richness they need to make the decision that's going to be best for them? And so if you look at these various forms of happening, they may search for some product information. They may look for a referral from friends and family. They may get advice. They may go look for a video. How do we enable that? How do we enable them to be able to make the best decision for them? And how do we enable them to bring all that together conveniently, easily, in a low-cost way that continually engages them?
Yeah, I think for me, there's 3 points that I would probably hit on. I think first point is how people are getting information. How can we help facilitate those discussions for them? And I think LinkedIn is a great place for doing so, as well as some other means. And Linda Toscano is going to be talking about that later on today, so I won't take full about what she's going to talk about. But I would also say 2 other things. I think the other huge thing that's happening, I think it's under-discussed, is this listening in this space and the information beyond the talk about your brand, but understanding what's happening with your brand, other brands, and how that fits into the marketplace and the changes that can be implemented internally. I think along the lines of, we've done a lot of work with people struggling with mortgages, and those individuals, they don't go to Facebook or LinkedIn, but they are talking on the net. They're just talking in more anonymous places and usually getting very bad information, unfortunately, because they're going to places that may not be as trusted. How do you build that trust so you can build communities around that? And I think that's a key aspect. And I think where we're headed is kind of what Clara talked about. Financial services historically was about relationships and community. And if you really think about it, that's what social media really is about. And I'll take it a step further, though. Social media on a scaled level allows us to intimately know our customers and know what they want the world to know about them. And it's finding ways to connect those dots. So not just listening. When people talk CRM, they start talking about listening about the brand. It's not about the brand. It's about how do I get to intimately know my customer? And by doing so, build a further relationship with them. I think tools are just starting to come up to speed on that piece. And I think over the next few years, that's going to be a huge victory for marketers, but it's all, if done right, it'll be a huge victory for brands. But the key is doing it right. I think there's also going to be some companies that may take away some of that trust by doing some unscrupulous things, or even things that we think are good, like underwriting based on social data. I just strongly disagree with that. But if I can get to intimately know them and build a relationship, to me that's huge.
I think because I'm close to the end of the speakers, I think I'll actually use an example to illustrate to answer your question.
Great.
One of a large trend is the emergence of small businesses and the importance of small business in the economy. You've probably all well read about that. And at American Express, within Open, that's our responsibility, is to help fuel that growth within the economy. And some sub-segment trends were that, obviously small businesses continue to look for more customers, and customers have an innate want to feel connected to their community. And therein lie the heart of Small Business Saturday, which was a program we created towards the end of the year, which sits right after Good Friday, and it's a day to really get out and support small businesses. So what we did was create a very deep campaign that used media tactics across the board. We obviously went out with Above the Line that supported it and took it right through to how we build relationships on an ongoing basis with our prospects and customers.
That's great. I appreciate it. Tara?
And Mike, the trend that I would underscore is mobile. And I think we used to operate in an environment in financial services where we could count on employees and reps being behind the corporate firewall. But the reality of today, as all of us know, I see everyone on their iPhones and their iPads, is that there are devices. It's this world of bring your own device. And so what's been very important to me personally is to architect a system that not only provides complete compliance coverage regardless of device, and we've found a great partner in LinkedIn to make sure that this is happening, but also from an enablement perspective, how do we make sure that advisors are representing themselves per brand guidelines, per regulatory guidelines, whatever device, whenever, wherever they're logging in?
That's great. Let's riff on mobile for a minute, because I think it is something it's a big one, for sure. And would love, just maybe open to anyone on the panel who has an opinion on this. How is mobile being discussed at work for you? Is it an opportunity? Is it a threat? How are you pursuing it?
It's a huge opportunity. I think it's an opportunity not only in providing a means, and each of these devices are a little different in themselves. How we use an iPad is very different than how we might use our phone. And so how do you distinguish that, and how do you create those experiences in that manner? And then to what Clara is saying, it's now a connected society. And it was quite fascinating. I just got an email this morning from a reporter in Asia, and they were talking about things that they're finding in Asia. What we know about Asia is the percentages that are hooked to the phone and how connected they are, and that's now having waves all the way into how the business is being run. And there's some things going on with like CEOs and whatnot, all because their employees are now connected in such a way. So it requires us to think differently, but that takes me back to my original comment. There's a culture shift, and these things are all playing a part of it.
I would say at American Express, mobile is central to our strategy. Everything from the Twitter handles that asks you to ask Amex, which you can ask any question you want of Amex, right through to how we serve up our advertising and how we communicate to customers. We obviously customize our advertising on mobile devices to be very different than what might be on other devices or what we would show in other mediums. So we think mobile and we solve for mobile at the heart of what we do.
Sean?
I'd agree. I mean, for us, mobile is absolutely critical. I mean, we want to be serving our customers where they are. And so an example of that is there's obvious ones like getting a quote or placing a trade, but we enable our customers to deposit checks via an iPhone or an iPad. I mean, that's something that's really convenient. And so I think it's really not just pushing in what were the obvious things we did on the web, how do we convert them to mobile and make people be able to do those wherever they are, but how do we think about the new capabilities that these devices create for us and the new opportunities they create for customers, and how do we push forward on that? And so that's something we launched about a year ago and have had tremendous uptake, not because of anything brilliant we did, but because it really meets a need for customers. I'm on the road, I need to deposit a check, I don't want to go to a branch. And so I think it's continuing to push through what do these devices enable that we weren't doing before, not just taking what we were doing before and putting it on mobile.
Yeah, I'm going to take it in a slightly different example, but I think it touches that. When you think of, most of us work for corporations or some kind of entity, and if you have a workplace retirement plan, we've always struggled with the fact that, because we're a permission-based business, to get access to that consumer group, you have a lot of struggles with things like, are you wired at work? And if you're wired at work, then you can have access to getting everything, and you can get the information from a customer standpoint the way you want it, where you want it. We've always seen that as an impediment. The greatest thing about mobile, and it's been a major cultural shift for us because we actually put mobile first now, which is really seismic for us. But the great thing about mobile is, everyone has a mobile device, some kind of smartphone, and it goes beyond. So when we used to hear, well, you can't do that here because it's a large manufacturing company and not all of them have computers at work. Now we're dealing with a whole different world where we're saying, well, that isn't an obstacle anymore because everyone has a mobile device or some kind of smartphone, and let's go there first and then back up. So it's been tremendously different for us. We think of mobile first, which is fantastic, but it's also the counter side of that is when you start to think like that, then you need firms like Clara's, like others to complement, like LinkedIn, to complement your core competencies so that you're going out and you're building the right system around that access.
Appreciate it. Frank, I'm going to ask you to start with this next question, but the question is about there's such a diversity of options and with social platforms out there. And whether it's Facebook or Twitter or Google Plus or LinkedIn or YouTube or Pinterest or whatever's coming next, how do you think about that? How do you, and you can take this in any of a few directions. So number one is, how do you begin to approach it? And again, from the standpoint of actionable insights for people in our audience who are thinking these things through, do you have different strategies for different platforms? Are you trying to be the same brand everywhere, different brands? How do you think about that?
I think that many companies look at things from a product perspective, and I think we have to shift the way we look at it. It shouldn't be from a product perspective. It's how do your customers use these spaces? What are those different customers? Your small business customer is going to use it one way. Your credit card customer might use it a different way. Your international customer might use it another way. How are they doing it? And every one of these spaces is very different and fits part of the mold that people need. LinkedIn, that's our professional space. That's where we have our professional conversations. Facebook, this is the family and friends place, and this is where we need to do that. Twitter is the place I meet new people, and you search and find new things. So every one of these spaces historically has been very different. The key is, first, you have to listen to the space in each one and understand that. Number two, I think it's, ask your customers how they wish to use it, what's important to them. And then finally, continually evolving that, which I think we do make a mistake on because it changes quite dramatically. There seems to be this arc of how people use, say, Facebook or any of these platforms. They start off doing, everything's cool, and then all of a sudden, it's, ooh, no, I'm not doing that. I'll do this. And you have to figure out, how is that evolving? All of it comes back to listening.
Great.
What I would say is I would first bifurcate between social networking and social media. Social networking, that's a social graph, and that's LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Google+. So they know who's connected to whom and how. Social media, it's not people-centric, but rather content-centric. So YouTube is social media around video. Pinterest is social media around pin boards. Instagram, I went to college with the founder. It's social media. I'm very jealous of him right now. It's social media around beautiful photos. Social graphs are great distribution mechanisms for social media. The way that Pinterest and Instagram got viral was they tapped into the social networking sites. So that's the first thing I'll say. The second thing I'll say is that across the social networks, what we're seeing at Hearsay Social, to Frank's point, is that Twitter largely is for retail, it's customer service oriented, it's a lot of reactionary type of interactions where it's an issue, question, complaint. Sometimes there's an offer involved, and it's really good for offers and deals. LinkedIn, we're seeing the heaviest adoption across financial services, certainly for mass affluent, high net worth, starting to see more adoption in digital with ultra high net worth, all LinkedIn. With Facebook, we see our retail cards and deposit customers really adopting Facebook, and our insurance customers as well.
Okay. Do you have a perspective?
Yeah, I mean, for us, I would just tail off of what Clara said. When you start to look at the social networks versus the social media, we're certainly leaning towards LinkedIn. Our business is one where it really is a professional engagement, whether it's our our distribution channels, our clients, that's where they are. The types of media that we begin to use will probably differ depending on, again, the audience, the customer need for that. I'll use by example a program that we did that we did probably back in October around National Retirement Saves Week. And we used LinkedIn because we could go there into the profile and find the base that we wanted to talk to for that week. So we were able to quickly go out to, volumes more folks than we could in our own book. Even though we have a very large book, because it's permission-based, it just takes longer to get to them. So you're able to target that market, target that segment, ask the questions. We went through a polling process. We used banner advertising to tie to where we wanted to go, but then we were able to provide content through other methods based on that. And it really helped to inform us. So we're seeing that in our business. I think it just stands to reason with the governance that we have over our business, that it allows us to do something in a very authentic way that we're not able to do in some of the other social networks that are out there. So, what I would say is I get very uncomfortable when you have a canned response in a social space. We're perverting that medium in my mind. So in LinkedIn, we can have an authentic voice as a business partner, as a professional that we don't have in other places. So for us, it really does follow what Clara said she's finding, which is that's where we're seeing a major push for our business. We're able to have that authentic voice. We're able to have the two-way in that environment that we're not in others.
John, Rodri, yes, yeah.
We're very similar at American Express, but particularly at Open, we obviously use all these channels for very different purposes. On Facebook, our daily posts are the drumbeat of our communication, and we use the feedback from that to help inform not just our brand strategy, but also we get feedbacks on the products and services that we offer. We use LinkedIn for product pages and content and information. And then we, on the consumer side, you've probably seen many of the promotions where we've been able to launch, whereby particularly consumers are able to get instant coupons online that they can use at national merchants such as Whole Foods and Zappos and other places. So the spectrum is broad, but our customer base is broad. So we use all of the different mediums for very different purposes, but they're unified at the heart of trying to understand our customers better and trying to deliver relevant, timely content and conversation to our customers that's valuable to them.
John?
Yeah, to echo what others have been saying, I think we serve multiple client groups in multiple segments and multiple businesses, so a generalizable kind of strategy is not appropriate and not what we do. I think instead what I suggest, we try to say what's the true north about how do we help this customer group. So if the customer is a high net worth advisor, if the customer is just starting on their first job and they have a 401k, if the customer just has an IRA, those are very different needs. And so it's less about what does the channel, and it's more about what is the need that we're trying to serve here. How can we help this person achieve their financial goals? How can we help them be a better investor, make better decisions? And so, and not to say that the channel decision becomes derivative, but I think it's kind of how do you frame the question? Customer first, channel second.
Great, I appreciate the responses. I'd like to talk about engagement of the customer for a minute, because I think one of the big trends that we're seeing, and I think you'll both see this in the research a bit later, and I think you've heard it a bit already from some of the panelists and from Meredith, is that this idea of engagement with the consumer is a big idea. And the consumer is in some cases quite clear what they want, in other cases it's murkier. But I think as marketers, it's incumbent upon us to change how we have done what we've done and now do it differently. So I'd love to hear from you folks about, and feel free anyone to jump in first, on how you think about engagement, what's changed, and how you're thinking about driving your business with that idea in mind.
So I'm happy to start this. So the reason why our company is called Hearsay is because we saw in the first wave of social media adoption, people listened first. It was very reactionary. It's the hear part of it, and that's very important. But quickly, we're not just here, it's hearsay. We have to say our message and influence clients and prospects with the messages, educational materials, research that will get them to where they need to go. And so I think we've seen tremendous strides over the last 12 to 18 months in being able to get from listening only to a more proactive mode where we're engaging around content that specifically helps clients and prospects move down that marketing funnel into a sale.
I think, as you really look at it, though, I think most financial firms, and let's just put it out there, are lousy at having a conversation. Pure and simple. You look at the messages.
Tell us what you really think.
I have to say, they push a message out and no one cares, and they keep pushing out and they keep pushing out. This is about a dialogue, and it's about a human dialogue. And it's not this framed, structured message that went through 50 million approvals just to get out there, and it took us 3 days to get it approved, and then there it is.
A lot of guilty laughs here.
Yeah.
Hey, we all know the process.
You've been through that process, right?
And actually at Citi we have 2 social lawyers. It's great. We have to get away from that. We have to get to be much more trusting, because what I'll say is, as you really start to dig into it, and Clara and I were talking about product that Hearsay has, and stuff that I've seen over my years in social media, what are our policies for our own employees? You can't do this. A lot of times that's what it is. We're regulated, so you can't say this. What's really happening is they are saying it. They are connecting to other people. They're having private conversations via direct message or private message or via LinkedIn with their customers. You know what? We have to understand this is happening, and this is not a bad thing. This is a good thing. We just need to make sure we're doing it in the right way. And so now it's bringing everybody together and going, okay, what are the right resources? What tools do we need? What are the right tools? What do our customers really want? And what is our process to get it? And then how do we make sure that people match up to all these regulations? And the other knock I'm going to give to the financial services firms out there, I'm also going to give it to the healthcare industry and other regulated industries. Everybody will say, oh, but it's regulators, it's regulations. You know what? Regulators are just as confused in this space as we are. Don't be scared of them, partner with them, have a conversation. They would respect that. And I've seen this, I've talked to regulators quite often, and they've even called me at times to ask questions about things. This is something that I think is really important for us as an industry to recognize that, times have changed since a lot of these laws were developed in 1929. And we need to really rethink that. But also, what happens in the real world? What are the real world situations? Because the regulations were designed when we had phone and we did mail, not anything else. Rethink it. And I think that we're heading down that path on all fronts, but I think it's been a little bit too slow.
I might add to that, but I'm going to respectfully disagree with some of what you said.
Oh, good. I like that.
Because clearly I want to represent my company well.
Represent. Go, Audrey.
You don't know me too well.
Obviously, people interact with American Express on a daily basis because they whip out their card and they will obviously engage deeper with us when they go to pay their bill and do other things.
As we heard from Meredith, guys like David over there.
Yeah. And the social world has evolved so quickly. We've had to move quickly too, and we've had to progress our brand. We've had to progress the infrastructure that makes our marketers successful. So just as you've geared up with lots of lawyers and compliance people, we have too. But we've also geared up with our employee base and tried to create a more forward-looking brand and forward-looking people who support and drive that brand, to the point that the daily posts that I talked to you about that we do every day, the actual marketing manager, which is, a relatively junior person in the organization, is actually the person who makes the decision about what goes on that site every day and does not have to go through the hoops that we might have had to go through 2 years ago to make a very simple post. But getting the engagement with the customer, the most important thing we had to do internally at American Express was enable the organization to do that so that we could use these tools to the best of their ability.
You know how you did that?
Just tell us.
I actually met with you guys 3 years ago.
Well, hey, thanks.
And a lot of your lawyers, and talked to them about it. Because what I'll say, it was a great conversation, because they recognized, you know what? We need to do something. What institutions are doing some good things? And at the time I worked at Comcast, and we met. And I said, yeah, you have to have this dialogue. You have to get that in. And the initial reaction was, no. But as we talked through it, there was lawyers in the room, there was marketers in the room, PR was in the room, compliance was in the room. At the end of it, they say, I get it. And we have to show this to the right people. We wound up having another meeting later on where they even brought more people in to talk about these things. So I agree wholeheartedly. And I think that having this dialogue, when I joined Citi, it used to be, it required 3 days to approve something. It really made for funny Twitter conversations.
It's over.
Yeah, I saw that, I'm like, huh? And what did we do? We pulled everybody in. I pulled in our chief counsel, general counsel, and said, let's look at this. And what happened? They agreed, this is not the way it should be, and we changed it really quickly. So I'll also tell you, not only partnering with regulators, partnering internally, by showing them this stuff, they're gonna go, that's common sense. Yeah, and that's, this isn't gonna destroy us if we do something. What's the worst thing that's gonna really happen? And once they see that and you get that buy-in, it makes it 1,000 times easier.
And to Frank's point, I mean, a lot of the time we spend, even though we are a pure enterprise software technology company, it's being a thought partner. It's being an educator. It's helping with the change management, making sure that everyone from IT to legal to compliance understands the value, understands the risk, and how to mitigate that. The other thing I'll say is that, recently I was catching up with the chief marketing officer of a Fortune 200 financial company that we work with. And she said something that was just very astute and simple and yet profound. And she said, Claire, we've seen this movie play before many times. She was in a similar role a decade ago when she was making the case for her reps to have email access and to get computers. And it was the same issues with IT and legal and compliance and the same argument for the business value and the competitive advantage. And so, as an industry, after LinkedIn, there's gonna be something else in a decade, and so it's part of our job. And I think that we've proven with technology and good policy, there are practices to ensure compliance, and then from there, the question quickly becomes, how do you drive ROI?
And go ahead, Sean.
Well, I was going to agree with Audrey's disagreement with Frank, but now I'm not sure where you are. But to me, I actually feel it's evolutionary. We've been talking with customers for 65 years, hundreds of thousands a day. Yes, there are new things about social media in terms of technology, in terms of regulation, but similar to what Clara was saying, we started 800 numbers, we started the web, we started mobile. And we've seen these things before, and there is always a temptation to say this time it's totally different. There's no parallels in history. There's nothing we can learn. And I don't feel that's the case. We've figured out how to talk to customers one-on-one in investor centers, on the phone, and a variety of different venues. I think because that's through a service lens. I think if it is through an advertising lens, then it is very different. But I guess, again, the question is, what are you trying to do here? And if you're trying to serve customers and help them meet their goals, then that service lens is quite valuable. And I think that there are a lot of parallels. And when we've looked at this in terms of when we started Fidelity.com in 1995, we had almost all the same issues and around what's the regulatory framework, how are we going to support it from technology, what's the supervision, responsibility, networking, and again, all those problems. When you're going through it, it seems like it takes a long time. When you look back, it's like, hey, that took a couple years, but we kind of figured it out. And I think we're in a similar place now.
And I'll just finish it off by saying I think there's truth in everything that is being said, and I think that different financial firms are on different point in the spectrum, the continuum of where we are. Speaking where we are right now, for me, it really boils down to two challenges that are distinct with social. One is content, and the other is commitment. And when I think of content, it's having enough content, but it's also having the right content for the consumer that's speaking to you at this time. And one of the things that we've been doing a lot of, we've focused, for example, on the millennials. And we've been doing a lot of work with some outside thinkers, to Clara's point, to say, what is the expectation here of this audience in terms of engagement? It's very different from other audiences, very different from some of the decision makers we do. Certainly there's overlap, but you have to have not only the content, enough content accessible, you have to be continually replenishing and renewing and changing that content for shifting demographics and different needs. In terms of commitment, as a financial institution, you have to commit to what it takes to run a social program and run that. And you commit to that with your own internal resources, but you also commit to it with a very robust outsourcing strategy, knowing that you don't know what you don't know. And I think, to me, it really boils down to those two challenges, the content challenge and the commitment challenge of an organization.
Did you want to say something?
And I'll just say, I mean, coming from Silicon Valley, the commitment portion is so important because this is such a nascent and rapidly changing space. There are new features that come out on LinkedIn, on the other sites, daily, weekly. And so there's profound implications, again, both on the compliance side as well as on the monetization, ROI, best practices, and training side.
So I had a few other questions that I would like to ask, but I want to make sure I manage the time well. And if we had any questions from you folks, then we'll go ahead and spend a few minutes doing that, and perhaps use the rest of our time doing that. So it looks like there's at least there's a few there. If we can get a microphone over in that direction. Yeah, I think you're the closest mic. Oh, great. Okay, go ahead.
Hi. Actually, you said you see the ultra high net worth space adopting more of this technology. Being in private bank and doing programs with Children of Wealth, or this weekend we had a big event with just women, I find them giving me a lot of feedback about their concerns, about their security, their identity. Particularly, I manage the U.S. and Latin America, so with a lot of our Latin America clients, from Colombia, Brazil, Mexico particularly, they're terrified of any security issues. However, they do see their younger generation, their children and their successors kind of moving within that, and they don't know how to address it necessarily. So I'm very interested in hearing your comment, because I'm a big proponent of pushing social media and social networking, but it's been a challenge educating others on how to feel comfortable addressing a private bank audience.
That's a great question. So I think the solution is twofold. I think from the part of the users, we're seeing some more celebrity type of high net worth clients. They actually use a pseudonym so that people can't find them. We see that a lot. The other thing is it's really on them to understand the privacy settings, because there's ways to be hidden, not be found in search results, to not show and expose your connection list. There's all these dials and levers that I think every LinkedIn user, not just ultra high net worth, should familiarize themselves with. But beyond the user responsibility, I think that there's a tremendous responsibility on the social networks. And I think LinkedIn has really led the charge in making their user interface for privacy settings very simple to understand, and giving people the option of how much or how little they want to share.
Yeah, I think for those clientele, there's things that you might want to concentrate on, which is, how do you be the facilitator? How do you be the one that's connecting them? Your brand's there, but how are you connecting them to each other? Because they have a tight bond. And exactly what you were saying, as soon as you're talking about them, many of them do use pseudonyms. They are out there, but they're using pseudonyms intentionally. They don't want to be found, but they still want to have those friendships like others do via these social networks, and talk to people that understand things that are going on in their life, which is obviously unique. So those are things that you might want to concentrate on. But again, it comes down to how well do you know them and how they use the space. You get to know them as you talk through them. And I find that a lot with the children within that segment. That's what they're doing.
But what I highly advise against is using geolocation services for them. Because for Twitter, sometimes they'll auto geotag where you are, and certainly for Foursquare and Facebook check-ins, that's when it starts to get really, I think, high security risk.
Yep.
But as a firm, and I'm interested, since you're with Citigroup, as a firm, how do you address the regulation issues? The fear that the firm has to, I did something that affected the client confidentiality or put the client at risk, and then put us at risk. How are you addressing that?
Yeah, it really comes down to A, partnerships. B, I'm not going to sit and tell you that we move at the speed of light. We're very careful and calculated in what we do, and we make those decisions with many people involved and talk through the risks, whether we're dealing with the high net worth individuals or dealing with our regular customer. Doesn't matter. We take the same concerns each time, and we go through, how do we want to do this? How are they using it? How can we be the facilitator of something? How are we help them and deliver something they need as opposed to what we want? how we're partnering with women in LinkedIn and connecting them that way and helping women in business. It's a key component for us, but we're doing it in a way it's very calculated, and I think that's the key to it. It's what do they want, and I don't think most people what do we tend to deliver when we're doing marketing and social media. Here's what we want you to have. No, it's what do you really want out of this? Do you certain segments aren't going to want to check in for a deal. It's just not what they want. They may want information. So how do you give them that? LinkedIn groups I find to be a great way to do that because it becomes a lot of opt-in aspects to it. So that becomes a segment that you do. You might have other times where, they are really private. How do you create a private network, which I don't think is talked about often enough. There are private networks that are hugely beneficial for companies as well as the groups that they're facilitating towards. So how do you consider that as well? So there's talk to those groups, talk to the segments, know them well. How do they use the space? What do they want from the space? And some of them may want nothing to do with you in the space, and you know what? That's okay. Ultimately get to know those things. And I will think as you go through that spectrum, you're going to find it will vary. But I think the ultra high net worth individuals in private wealth, it is interesting because it is more about facilitation. And I found that through numerous studies that we've done.
Thank you. Read a question. Yep.
Hi, Jay Mandel from MasterCard. Shaquille O'Neal once famously said that his Twitter philosophy was 70% to make him laugh, 20% to inspire them, and 10% to sell them something. And I'd like you guys to react to that 10%. How do us in the financial services world get to the 10%?
I think it depends on what you're selling. It's easier for retail cards and deposits because you can do things like special offers and refer a friend, this, that, and the other. I think when you get into financial advising, it's a longer sales cycle and it's a soft sell that works. And you might find information about someone's life event, money in motion event on LinkedIn, but when it comes time to reaching out, you might not want to reach out on LinkedIn. You might want to meet them in person or see them at a charity event. So there's a lot of crossover between online and offline. I'd say that, again, it really depends on which segment of the market and what exact product or service that you're selling. And if you X out the retail cards and deposit space, I'd say that most of what we see successful with financial services on social media is upper funnel for marketing. It's an investment in that relationship over time.
And I would add to that, clearly we've tested all kinds of things. The 70-20-10 that he has, we've done it 10-20-70. We've tried it all single ways with all single channels. And it really is about knowing who you're talking to and knowing who the audience is and correlating the messages to the audience. We spent a tremendous amount of investment on generating relevant content that connects our customers to our brand, because the more connected you are to your brand, the more you will use that brand. And it's not always about selling something. I'm sure you've seen our very awesome open forum site, which is about educating and bringing classes to our customers, giving them relevant content, bringing them experts in the space. Yes, it's brought to you by American Express, but it's content that you, our customer, wants, and ultimately that just engenders the relationship over time.
I actually think it's a really good point. While we're certainly on that spectrum where we're having institutional products, they're not retail, we're in that broad bandwidth of the funnel. You're asked a lot of time about the metrics, that 10%. Like, what is this activity doing to increase sales or drive revenues or grow, however it's framed. And I think, to Clara's point, when you kind of start to use this in a way that's about enhancing your brand, about creating a new piece in a relationship channel, about not looking about what you're selling, but what the customer and consumer is needing from this engagement, it becomes very hard to quantify, especially in our space, that magic 10%. So it's really, you talk about cultural shifts. It's a cultural shift to have conversations with, my boss's boss about, this is a different type of metric that you're looking at and a different scale. And it's just a change. I know for us, that's that's probably elusive.
To me, this is the relationship economy. I would challenge you in many ways to really start to think about things. How do you use social media? Are you going out in social media and buying stuff because someone just said it? Probably not. You're using it, you're connecting to family and friends, you're doing your certain information. I follow a lot of different groups on topics that I'm passionate about. Is it causing me to go buy things out there? No, I'm not looking at it. I ignore that stuff. So I don't think social media is that sophisticated, guys. How do you use it? It really gives you a good understanding. I use LinkedIn certain ways. I use Facebook certain ways. I use Twitter certain ways. I use Google Plus certain ways. I don't use Pinterest as much as I should. Sorry, I just can't. But anyway, I do look at it. But think about how you do it, and that's going to tell you what will work. And then also talk to your customers.
Yeah, I think the key is about I knew what you guys were going to say, along these lines. But the key is bridging the realities of social media with senior management expectations.
Well, there's light at the end of the tunnel, because although you don't optimize for a transaction today, when I worked at Google, you could click through and look at the conversion and calculate, to the cent how much ROI you were getting. You have ROI longitudinally. And what we've done with some of our longer standing customers, some of them in this room, is that we've been able to correlate, and it's correlation versus causation, but there's still lift. So we'll take someone like David, who becomes my LinkedIn connection a year later, and I'm a financial advisor. A year later, he has more assets under management as a percentage of his overall total net worth with me than someone else who otherwise on paper looks like David but is not connected to me on LinkedIn, or is connected but hasn't been clicking on my content. And so we can take that difference and attribute at least part of that lift to the social media relationship. And we indeed have done this, and the results are very, very promising.
So guys, we have time for just one more question before we're going to wrap up. And I'm going to give much love to the woman in back. You're sitting in the back, it's hard to get involved. Thanks for being so involved.
Oh, thanks. Hi. So we talked about social graphing earlier, Clara. So I would like to know, as someone who works in digital media, works specifically on acquisition, is very, very metrics focused, what you guys foresee for the convergence of data. So obviously, we talked about social graphing in the realm of the internet, possibly blogs, maybe partnerships through companies like Tint and 33 Cross, those types of things. But I think the biggest struggle is, how do we break down the barriers of companies like Facebook? So everybody houses their own bucket of data. So you're possibly, actually most likely, hitting that same person with 19,000 different social graphs in places that are completely and utterly firewalled. So the question is, do you guys foresee a convergence of data across the social space within the realms of social graphing?
I'm going to answer that question in a couple of ways. No, I think that the social graphs, the most important asset they have is the data, and so they're going to continue to monetize on that, but I don't think that that's a bad thing. I think it's good from a privacy perspective and from a data quality perspective, all sorts of reasons. Where I do see interesting convergence, that gets us closer down to the conversion, down the marketing funnel, is threefold. Number one, thinking about how search can converge with social media. The holy grail of marketing is delivering the right message to the right person at the right time. Google was highly successful in being able to correlate people's keyword searches to their intent. Today, social media, like I said, is largely upper funnel. The moment where you can marry those two, that becomes very interesting. If I search for a financial advisor, I should see a different set of search results than someone else, than my friend who just sold Instagram to Facebook, for example. There's all kinds of targeting that you can do on search that isn't happening today. The second one is to go even further down the conversion funnel to transactions. And this is what American Express has done. Think about how rich credit card data there is. They're actually getting people to opt in to connect their social network profiles and their social graph to that credit card data. So that's really powerful. I think we're just scratching the surface of what's possible there. And then the third area is if you take transaction data, not just credit cards, but from an e-commerce site. I think social commerce has a lot of upside in the quarters and years ahead.
So we're going to need to pause there, but I wanted to thank our panelists very much. And thank you so much for the participation and for the questions. Great job. Thank you.